Dear all, ICMC, SMC delegates, participants, thank you very much for coming to this historical place, the Academy of Plato, η Ακαδημία του Πλάτωνα. You might think that I am crazy, that I have brought you here, because it's a place that is neglected and most of the Greeks or Athenian people don't know it. How do I know this place? The last years I have been called to teach in a project, a European project, named Academy of Plato, The Paths of Knowledge, which is a program who gives seminar about philosophy, music, arts, to people that have not studied at the universities, but also to people that have bachelors and they want to learn more about ancient Greek history, philosophy, but also about arts in general and history. So through this project, we made a lot of walks, like the peripatetic school of philosophy, with our students in this wonderful place. And slowly, we have found out that there is a big relationship between the Academy of Plato and the central city of Athens, and we have found also ancient paths that lead from Acropolis till here. So my main idea was to bring our keynote speakers and invited speakers, composers here, in order, first of all, to play the La Légende d'Air of Yannis Xenakis in the same style that he has done the performance of the Politov of Mycene in 1978. So I think that he would be very glad if now he sees us from there, or from there, that we are here playing this mythical work, electroacoustic work of Xenakis. But after I have been asked if my invited could tell some words about Plato. So I have put them a kind of homework, I'm sorry about that. And I asked them just to tell me their opinion. What do they think about the cultural heritage of Plato on what concerns the mathematical basis of music, but not only, because in his dialogues, Plato contributed to the theory of art, and in particular dance, music, poetry, architecture, and drama. Plato has discussed a whole range of philosophical topics, including ethics, metaphysics, where topics such as immortality, man, mind, and realism are discussed. And for this reason, I think that the most famous feature of Platonic thought is the idea that ethical knowledge is closely linked with mathematics and with an understanding of the nature of the universe. This idea sometimes strikes modern readers as simply bizarre, but it takes on fresh interest because of contemporary interest on the ethical implications of medical and biological research, music, arts, architecture, and especially which is currently being analyzed in mathematical terms. This is the reason so I have asked from our keynote and invited speakers to say some words about the impact of Platonic rhizomes, and rhizomes is a term that in Greeks means roots, but also according to Empedocles, it means the 4 elements of the nature, and we find it also in Timaeus of Plato. And I have so metaphorically asked them to speak about the Platonic rhizomes in contemporary and computer music. So I am very glad to have here distinct personalities of computer music, music informatics, and sound and music computing. And now I will give the microphone to my colleague Yannis Zanos to say also his introduction.
Okay, a very brief introduction from me. on another note, I find it quite moving that we are in this place as an academic community, and it gives a different dimension to be in a place where peripatetic schools we had talked and walked and did philosophy. If you've read Plato's dialogues, there are interesting introductions, there are very vivid introductions in the dialogues that give a setting for the discussion, and the setting is indirectly related to the content of the dialogue, but it sets a mood so that you get not only rationally, you don't approach the topic only rationally, but also with all your senses, with your memory, with your with the whole human being. So this is a setting where we can be a community of whole human beings out in nature. And I'm very personally moved to see so many faces that are important pioneers and important figures in the whole community present here today, especially the panel, but also among you. And we are here once more talking. This is ICMC is something that has a long history, and it feels to me a bit like family, actually. I realize it now. But I will not introduce each of you. You have the program. I think we should be short, and that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will start with famous composer of electroacoustic music and researcher, Jean-Claude Risset.
Well, I must say that I'm very grateful for Anastasia to have brought us here, and as Yanis said before, I find it very moving to be here in the gardens of Academos, that's where it was so much historical resonance, and I'm delighted but intimidated, and I won't have the pretense to deal very deeply with Plato philosophical points of view. That, of course, is one of the great philosophers. The French philosopher Monique Dixot considered there are two essential philosophers. One is Plato, the other is Nietzsche, and maybe that's related to the stasis and to the dynamics of flux, the change, and the energy hubris against permanence of things with Plato. Well, one thing I will say, however little I know about Plato, is that he was certainly concerned about music, but I don't know how. I mentioned that he said that the laws of the city would change if you would change the scales. But I won't tell more about this, but I just would remark that he apparently didn't really trust art for ethics and for social organization. According to him, poets are bad teachers forging fables. Painters merely copy the phenomena, the appearances, which are only degraded copies of reality, as was discussed about the cave before. And I think there is one passage where Plato recommended to cover poets with flowers, but to ban them from the Republic. So, but in any way, that's all I would say about this, because in some way we might think that this community might be perhaps closer to Aristotle and to Aristoxenus, I mentioned before. But anyway, Plato is a kind of eternal figure of philosophy and human thought and human endeavor. I'll just, for my part, will evoke, well, you mentioned the four elements, which I thought mostly Empedocles, but of course that was, for me, that was a strong intuition of the states of matter. That's rather incredible. And I'll just mention about my own influences. I was extremely struck by the evocation of the mythical continent, New Atlantis, perhaps a reminiscence of the destruction of the Minoan civilization, more than 10 centuries BC by huge volcanic destruction, which caused considerable damage between Santorini and Crete. But I will just mention here that this evocation inspired Sir Francis Bacon, who was Lord Chancellor of England, and he did a book, The New Atlantis, in 1624, the utopia of a continent where scientific progress would strongly influence the daily life of the community. Now, he has this passage that you may all know, but if I think I'll just read it briefly. He describes the experiment on sound. We also have sound houses where we demonstrate and practice all sounds and their generation. We have harmonies which you have not, of quarter sounds and lesser slides of sound. Diverse instruments of music, likewise to you unknown, some sweeter than any you have, together with bells and rings that are dainty and sweet. We represent small sounds as great and deep, likewise great sounds extenuate and sharp. We make diverse tremblings and warblings of sound, which in their original are entire. We represent and imitate all articulate sounds and letters, and the voices and notes of beasts and birds. We have certain helps which set to the ear to do further the hearing greatly. We have also diverse, strange, and artificial echoes, reflecting the voice many times as if it were tossing it, and some that give back the voice louder than it came, some shriller, some deeper, yes, some rendering the voice differing in the letters or articulate sound from what they receive. We have also means to convey sounds in trunks and pipe, its strange lines and distance. Now I was amazed by this text, a prophecy of the recent possibilities, in fact, of digital sounds and processing, and the visionary imagination of Bacon had been set in motion by suggestion of the devices invented in his time, especially the development of the automated organ and other music machines. It was similar for Edgar Varese to call for new materials from electricity after he heard from Ferruccio Busoni about Thaddeus Kyle dynamophone, even though probably would have hated the sound if he had had a chance to listen to it. So I mentioned this. I had the occasion to design an evening of music around Bacon's New Atlantis, so indirectly from Plato, and I imagined a script guiding the listener through a kind of journey through the continent, and I used this occasion to demonstrate a number of things that indeed the computer can achieve, and I had played things from my own work, but also Turena Sinfonie from John Chowning and a new piece from Ridolfi in the Fondation Mecte. So I'll just stop here to say that Plato, of course, has so much resonance to our times and place, and I don't think I should say any more and turn this to others that are more competent.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jean-Claude. And now John Chowning will make his own tribute to Plato. I have just written this title because it was the same, but you can say whatever you want.
Well, thank you, Jean-Claude, and thank you, Anastasia, and all of the other guests who are here, and especially all of you with whom I think we all feel very, very comfortable as a community. And I'll say a bit about maybe the Socratic abode in relationship to the formation of karma. The Artificial Intelligence Lab was a population, as I said a little bit this morning, of disciplines from engineering to linguistics to philosophy to psychiatry and computer science, of course, engineering, of course. But it was an environment where we were encouraged, indeed, asked by the scientific community detailed questions about what we did, why we did it, their confrontation with the arts and our confrontation with the engineering sciences and sciences was enriching for both sides, that we fell into mathematics or mathematics and music through within this environment, and through, in my case, through the oral learning and association of the stimuli that I generated just on the basis of curiosity about numbers. As I mentioned this morning, the golden mean, the golden ratio, or in Euclid's terms, the greater and lesser mean, became very important because of the sound that I produced in the context of FM synthesis. And this led me into an understanding about this ratio, which basically permeated all the work that I've done in the years since Stria. Stria was based upon the powers of the golden ratio and what I called the pseudo-octave, and that became part of my vocabulary, enriched with my composition of phone, the Greek word for sound or voice. I guess it's phony, but it's hard to find the macron in normal texts on the computer, so I use the French "et," but in fact it's phony, and from its beginning it was. So that then led to Voices, which is the piece that we'll perform on Thursday evening, again based upon spectra that are filled with powers of the golden ratio. The interesting thing about the last piece that we will perform is that it's a deep mathematical underpinning with the most human of all musical instruments, the singing voice. And I was not sure how that would work. And happily, I had a soprano in my home who was willing and able to explore with me this terrain that finds its roots back in the antiquity, of not only from the theoretical underpinnings, but having to do with the Pythia of Delphi. It's been an experience of learning for me, through beginning with my ear and the incredible experience of the AI lab and its likeness to the kinds of dialogues that occurred in this city in antiquity, and how we've been able to perpetuate that in the Karma, the center at Stanford, where the same kind of interchange is part of our daily lives. So I think I'll leave it there. And pass it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much telling us your experience with music and mathematics, and also your Euclidean lines who have inspired you in your computer music composition. And now I invite Gerard Assayag from IRCAM, who is going to speak of cause and form, the δημιουργός in the machine.
Thank you, Anastasia. Just the time to upload my speech. Well, I was looking for connection between Plato and computer music, and actually I thought that I had to get first through his most famous student, Aristotle. So, as you know, at the heart of Aristotle metaphysics, you have the concept of the four causes, which are organized into two couple of opposition: the formal causes and the material causes, which constitute a static, rational, analytic scheme of causality, and the final, to telos, efficient cause, which express the principle